Blade of the Rune King or Kraken Slayer? That's the question I get the most out of everything on my stream. And in today's video, we're gonna go over when to build what's stronger, and if there's other items that could be relevant. We're also quickly gonna go over runes and what keystones are the best in what scenarios. A common misconception in League of Legends is that there's just one best build and one best rune page. This is just not the case, and it's very important that people realize this. You have to always fluctuate your builds and your runes according to enemy team comp and your own team comp, and especially of course the matchup you're playing. Lethal Tempo is the most common rune on Yasuo, and you should be running it about 70% of your games. You should always run it if you have good CC knock-up team comps, and you also have decent matchups. That's a no-brainer, you should always take Lethal Tempo in those scenarios. Also, if you're playing against DPS champs, fighter champs, mostly melee champions, Lethal Tempo is superior most games. And also with the combination of Resolve, you get some tankiness in the fights. And Resolve will also help you throughout the laning phase. If you have little setup, you're playing against long range, then you should go for Fleet. If you're playing against mages, AD carries, and you have almost no frontline, no tanks to set you up, Fleet is always superior. This will help you dodge skill shots and also gap close to the ranged players. If you're playing against champions, you don't feel like you're able to kill, but you don't necessarily need the mobility that Fleet provides, then Grasp is a great option. Grasp you can stack throughout the laning phase, and you can get quite tanky from it. It's also quite a good regen tool, and it makes laning phase quite nice into the correct matchups. I would say Grasp is a really good rune into a champ like Malphite, for example, where getting Lethal Tempo doesn't feel good, getting Fleet doesn't really feel good, but having Grasp in that matchup makes it way easier for you to survive the lane, and it's way harder for him to do anything after level 6, because you have so much health. When I run Grasp into Malphite, for example, I usually gain about like 300 to 400 HP just from that rune if it's a long game, which is absolutely incredible. So make sure you look out for those matchups where you want the shorter trades instead of the longer trades. Then the Grasp rune is an extremely strong rune if you know when to take it. To summarize, Lethal Tempo for long trades, Fleet against range and for mobility, and Grasp for short trades and scaling. Now let's go over the main question: Blade of the Rune King or Kraken Slayer? Blade of the Rune King is a no-brainer against healthy champs, bruisers, tanks, or mages that are building Liandries, or Rod of Ages, or Proto Belt, right? HB items, Blade of the Rune King all the way, and it's probably the most common item on Yasuo right now, and you should probably be building it about 60% of your games. Now that Kraken Slayer also got a buff with Bork last patch, it's also quite decent into bursty champs. So Kraken Slayer is it's better into assassins most of the time, in my experience. What I really like about Kraken Slayer is you get more movement speed. It's also better to build early game. It's a stronger early game item than Blade of the Rune King due to its components. The components in Kraken Slayer is by far superior. Another item people don't really talk too much about, but I also get some questions about it, is Phantom Dancer. I like Phantom Dancer maybe like 5 to 10% of my games if I'm playing against really long range and I feel like I have really big issues gap closing. So maybe I can combine it with Fleet, I have Phantom Dancer, and then with Phantom Dancer, because you have so much attack speed, you can manage to get different boots, so you can run Swifties. This will make you an extremely fast player, and you can catch up to anything and run away from anything. The downside with this is you will lack damage until you get the Infinity Edge, but it also provides you with the fact that you can utilize your crit passive earlier, which is amazing. But then again, you will do way less damage with Phantom Dancer than Kraken Slayer or Bork. But that might be a worthy sacrifice in the correct games where you need the mobility more than you need the damage. And the last relevant item I'm gonna talk about is Yuntal. Yuntal also is quite decent item, but I don't build it very often. And here's why. The reason for it is the build path. I think the build path is really awkward for Yasuo, because you have to get a BF sword early game. Now, Yuntal is a good item, especially when you get it, so if you're snowballing early game, and you also have a lot of setup on your team, because you don't get any mobility from Yuntal, right? You just get raw damage. Then I think it's very good. If you have that setup team comp, then it can be actually worth building over Blade of the Rune King and Kraken Slayer. But then, as I said, you have to have like a fairly decent comp, you have to have a decent matchup, and you have to be ahead, usually in the early game. Yuntal is the highest value early game item you can get, and the combination with Infinity Edge and Yuntal, you will have the highest 2-item build damage that you can possibly get. You will also be able to utilize your crit passive at 100% crit at 2 items, which is also amazing. But as I said, this item I build very rarely. But if you can look out for those games where it could be good, it might win you some games actually. Now let's go over secondary items. I think the best secondary item, generally speaking, is shield bow. You should be building shield bow for about like 80% of your games. The reason for it, it sets you up easily for Infinity Edge, 100% crit. At third item, you also get some defense stats, you get AD, and it's an easy item to build component-wise. So shield bow, generally speaking, is a better secondary option than most other options. But I would also say, if you really are playing against a very heavy tanky comp, let's say you're playing against Malphite, for example, or just like super heavy armor comps, then Lord Doms is a better option as a secondary item, because you can shred that early armor and you get that crit passive super fast. So Lord Doms or Mortal Reminder, depending if they have a lot of healing, will give you a lot of damage early game, but also you won't get that defense shield that you get from shield bow. But it could be worth sacrificing that if they're building a lot of armor early game. Now for the third option, I would say Stridebreaker is quite a good item if you are lacking a front line, and also you want to set up plays easier for yourself. Now, Stridebreaker gives you health, it gives you attack speed, and it also allows you to do a different type of boot than Berserks, because you get more attack speed, right? So you can do Tabies or Swifties and or Mercs, right? Which is a nice way of utilizing that attack speed, so you don't overclock it with the Berserkers. But then again, you don't get that crit passive, and you are definitely hurting your damage here. But as I said, if you don't have a front line and you need to set up plays yourself, you're lacking CC on your team, for example, then Stridebreaker could be a good option to make it a bit easier to do something in team fights. But as I said, shield bow probably the best most of the time. Now, of course, for the third item, Infinity Edge, generally, almost always. Some games I do shield bow into Lord Doms instead of Infinity Edge, so I skip the Infinity Edge. That could be fine, but most of the time you want crit as a secondary item, and then as a third item you want to round out with the Infinity Edge. And that's generally the best way to go about it, but sometimes you want to switch it up depending on what you're playing against and what items you're running. Now for like fourth and fifth item, right? Death Stance, generally a very good option. Guardian Angel could be a good option. If you're playing against heavy AP, then I would really like either a Spirit Visage if you have a lot of shields and healing on your team, or you can run Jackshow to get like a bit more resistances both in armor and magic resist. It depends a bit if they have like split damage. But usually a good rule is to look at what enemy team champs have the most gold and itemize against that, right? So if there's, for example, you're playing against Yone, right? And as a fourth item, maybe Randwinds would be a better option than anything else, right? Because you want to take down that crit. So let's say they have Yone, they have Tryndamere, then getting a Randwinds as a fourth item, it could be very beneficial, right? So you have to always look at those type of things. But there's a lot of really good options. But I think Def Stance, generally speaking, as a 4th item is very good. And GA is very nice. Because you get some AD, you get some resistances, and you also get like those passives that can help you out to survive in the fights. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something. If you did, make sure to leave a like. And also, if you have any questions and you feel like I missed something, just leave a comment. I'll try and answer as many comments as possible. And also, make sure to subscribe. If you're not subscribed, it's free and you can always change your mind later. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone. Peace out.